We're now on to stage 11, so we've almost finished the first page of the instructions. For this, we've got to make one new part. This is a beam that's 4 long that has an extension on it. Now to make this part, probably the most similar one that we've made so far is this right angle beam with a curve. So let's open that part and then save it as a copy and make some changes. So let's go to File, Save as Copy and Open. And I'm going to name it as something like 4beam with extension. And then save as a copy and open, and you can close the original file. Now to create the 4beam, first let's delete everything we definitely don't need. So we don't need this curve on the top, and we also don't need the curve cut. But actually, if we try to delete the curve, we can see it's got some child features. So if we delete the curve, these features will also be deleted. One of them is the mirror feature. And we actually want to keep the mirror feature because it mirrors the whole surrounds over to the other side. So before we delete this curve feature, let's first edit the mirror feature. And let's remove that curve cut from the features to mirror. And we can then exit that mirror feature. We can now delete that curve feature and the curve cut feature, and it won't affect the mirror. And you can also delete the underlying sketch that will be left over afterwards. Now we can start to edit the rest of the part. Let's start off by editing the first feature and editing the sketch underneath it. That's the beam. Now firstly, we only need to be 4 long. We don't need 5 holes, we need 4. So let's double click where it says 5. Let's change that down to 4. We can then delete this vertical section on the right, and we can delete those 2 extra circles. Then we can drag in the outside of the slot so it's concentric with this right hand circle. So we should have a 4 long beam like that. Let's press OK, and if you get any errors you can just ignore those. And we should have something like this if you drag back to the first feature. However, we've only got one side filled in. We want both sides filled in because there's an axle cut on both sides. So we need to edit the beam feature itself. So let's edit the feature, and then in selected contours, let's just choose this circle on the right hand side. So when you exit, you should have something like this. It's a 4 long beam, but it's only got 2 holes in the middle. Then let's drag down below the axle cut, and we can see this is sort of worked, but we still need to make some changes. So let's edit the sketch underneath this as well. First off, we can delete all of this stuff up here because we don't need this. And now if we look at the remaining sketch, this part with the axle cut on the right is actually in the wrong place. It's been mirrored about that 3rd hole, as if we've still got 5 holes in the beam. But we've only got 4 now, so we need to move that mirror point somewhere to the left. So what we can do, instead of deleting this and redrawing it all, we can actually just move that mirror point. Click on the bottom end of the center line, and there should be a few coincident relations. You can delete both of those relations, and then we should be able to drag that center line around, and that will move where the mirrored part of the sketch is. To get to the correct place, let's drag it to the left a little bit, and then you can drag down and just hover over the midpoint of that bottom line. When you get to about the midpoint, you should see a midpoint relation appear. You can then release the mouse button, and we should lock that center line in the correct place in the middle. And you should see your sketch is now fully defined. We can then press Exit Sketch, and that should work correctly. You should have a feature something like this. Now if you have some problems at this stage, if yours looks a bit different, you might have to go in and edit the feature itself, and then just edit the selected contours. So you might need to choose all the areas we want to cut out correctly. So it's the cross area on both sides, it's also that kind of wedge shape, and then it's the little rectangle that joins the 2 sections together. So we should come out with something like this. Next up, we want the whole surround. Let's drag down below that feature. And again, we've got a warning on the sketch because we've lost some relations there somewhere. So let's edit the sketch underneath the feature and just delete all those extra entities that we don't need. So we only really need 2 circles in the middle for those 2 central holes. Then press OK, and that whole surround should be created. Next, we can drag below the cavity cut. Now we only need the cavity cut in the middle. So again, let's edit the sketch underneath this cavity cut feature. And we can delete all of this extra stuff up here. And we can also delete this stuff on the right here. If you find that your circles become underdefined, so if they turn blue, then you can add in some extra dimensions if you need them. You can then exit the sketch, and you see for me that's cut out the correct area. For you, you might just need to go in and edit the feature and choose that central cavity cut. The depth here should be 1.4 millimeters, so it doesn't quite go all the way through. Next, you can go down below the fillet feature, and you'll probably just have to edit this and remove any missing edges there. So we should just have those 4 edges in the middle. Next, we can drag below the mirror, and that will add the cavity cut and the whole surround on both sides. And we can go all the way down to the bottom below that final fillet, and then we can edit that and we can remove any missing edges. So you should just have 8 of them, 4 on each side. We're now almost done. We've just got to add the extension on the right hand side. Let's start a sketch on this outer face. And the extension profile in the middle is just a normal circle. So we'll get the circle tool and we'll draw a circle that's 5 millimeters diameter. So it's just a little bit larger than the usual 4.8 that we use. Then let's draw a second circle and you can link that to the outside. So if you need to set the size for that, that is 7.4. We can then extrude this profile upwards, but before we do, we need to cut out those scallops on the corners. Now these are pretty similar to that large bush part that we made. If I quickly go back to that part, it's the same sort of cut. So it's these corner sections cut away. We can just have a quick look at that sketch to remind ourselves of the dimensions. So it's an inner 6.4 millimeter diameter circle, and then there's those 4 outer circles that have got a gap that's 2.3 millimeters. Let's go back to that part that we're working on and copy that kind of sketch. So first I'm going to get a center line, going to draw a center line from the middle of the sketch going up and to the right, and I'm going to make sure that's at 45 degrees to the vertical. I'm then going to add a circle at the end of that center line, and we also need to add another circle in the middle of the 2 concentric ones, and that circle is 6.4 millimeters diameter. And then if you remember, we made the outside of this small circle tangent with the 6.4 circle. This means that they're exactly touching each other. Then we added 2 points on that small circle where it intersects with the outer circle of the part. So get the point tool, zoom in a little bit, and then just hover over the intersection between the outside of the part and that small circle. Now when you've added those 2 points, you should be able to drag them only along that outer edge and the circle. If you find that you're missing one of those relations, you can click on the point, hold down Control, and also select the circle that you're missing, and then add a coincident relation. And then let's just get Smart Dimension, and let's set the size across that gap as 2.3 millimeters. That should then fully define your circle. We can then pattern this circle around, so we've got 4 of them. So let's select the circle, go to the Sketch tab, click on the Linear Sketch Pattern drop down, and then choose Circular Sketch Pattern. In the settings, we want to choose 4 instances, 360 degrees, and equal spacing. And if you find that you're patterning around the wrong point like this, what you can do is right click here in the first box and press Clear Selections. And then zoom in, and then for the center of the pattern, let's choose the center point of that axle circle. And you see now we've got the correct preview, so we can press OK. Then if your sketch is still underdefined, you can just add some tangent relations between the small circle and the 6.4 circle. You might have to add 2 of them. And when you're done, your sketch should look something like this. We now need to extrude a certain area here. So let's go to Features, Extruded Boss Base. We're doing a blind extrude. It's 3.85 high. Then in the selected contours, we need to choose this inner circle here, and then we need to choose these 4 outer areas of the circle. Then let's press OK, and it should look something like this. We can rename that as Extension. You can then save this part, the color doesn't need to change, and in the next video, we'll go on to stage 11 and we'll add this part in there.